The heat that has felt like it would never end is finally about to break, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. The computer models that guide every forecast in this country went to sleep one night showing a hot, stubborn, unmoving late summer. And they woke up showing something completely different. A pattern is now locking into place across the top of the world, a pattern so large it stretches from the coast of Alaska all the way to the frozen edge of Greenland. And it is going to reach down and grab the middle of the United States by the collar. If you have been sweating through night after night that never cools off, if you have been staring at your thermostat wondering when this endless heat finally breaks, then stay with me. Because the answer is closer than you have been told. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what is coming when it hits your part of the country, and the one thing most people are going to completely miss about this pattern shift. Let's start with the big picture. Up near the very top of our hemisphere, high in the atmosphere where the jet stream races around the globe like a river of wind, something called a blocking pattern is forming. That word blocking is exactly what it sounds like. Normally, the jet stream flows fast and mostly straight from west to east, dragging weather systems along with it one after another, keeping everything moving. But every so often, a giant dome of high pressure plants itself in a spot and refuses to budge. It acts like a boulder dropped into that river of wind. The flow can no longer go straight through, so it has to bend. It buckles. It carves out enormous loops. And inside those loops, cold air that normally stays trapped up in the Arctic suddenly finds an open door to the south. Two of these boulders are setting up at once. And that is what makes this so unusual. One dome of high pressure is building near Alaska. Another is building near Greenland. Put a wall of high pressure on both ends of the continent, and the cold air trapped in the middle of that buckled jet stream has nowhere to go but down, straight into the heart of North America. There's a third piece I have to add because it is the engine sitting underneath everything. Out in the Pacific Ocean, El Niño is strengthening, and it is strengthening fast. The Climate Prediction Center now puts the odds at greater than 90% that this becomes a very strong event heading into the fall and winter. Forecasters watch a handful of key measurements to know when this kind of thing is about to happen. Right now, several of them are flashing the same signal at the same time. The first is something called the North Atlantic Oscillation, a way of measuring the pressure set up over the northern Atlantic near Greenland. When that number swings negative, it means high pressure is building up over Greenland. That is one of the two boulders. The latest data has that number diving negative right around the 24th of the month and staying there, potentially all the way into the first days of September. That is not a small blip. That is a sustained shift. And it is the kind of setup that reroutes cold air toward the eastern half of the country. The second measurement is the East Pacific Oscillation. This one governs what happens up near Alaska. When it goes negative, a ridge of high pressure balloons up over Alaska in the northeastern Pacific. That is the second boulder. Here's the part that made forecasters look twice at their screens. Both of these signals are turning negative at nearly the same time, in the same window, and they reinforce each other. A negative reading near Alaska builds a block on the western side of the continent. A negative reading near Greenland builds a block on the eastern side. Put a wall of high pressure on both ends, and the cold air trapped in the middle of that buckled jet stream has nowhere to go but down, straight into the heart of North America. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because there's a real disagreement happening between the models right now, and it matters. The two heavyweight forecast systems that meteorologists lean on most are the European model and the American model. Think of them as two extremely experienced navigators looking at the same storm on the horizon. Most of the time, they agree on the big picture. Right now, they do agree that a block is coming and that cooler air is heading south. But they disagree on how strong that block gets and how far south the cold reaches. The American model is leaning toward a deeper, stronger block, which would send colder air plunging much farther down the map. It's the more dramatic solution, the one that brings more relief to more people. The European model sees the same shift but keeps it a little more restrained. Cooler in the north, but not diving as dramatically toward the south. That gap between them is the single biggest uncertainty in this entire forecast. How that argument resolves decides whether the deep south gets any real relief at all. The trend, though, the direction everything is leaning, favors the colder outcome for the northern tier and possibly a push of that cooler air farther south than we have seen in a long time. So let me paint the picture of how this actually unfolds day by day, because the timing is everything. Right now and for the rest of this week, you are already feeling the first hints of change. A cooler push of air is sliding through parts of the country. But here is the catch. This first cool shot is not the main event. It is a preview. Every single day, the heat gets reinforced right behind it. So you might wake up to a beautiful morning and then watch the temperature climb right back up by afternoon. The pattern is not fully locked in yet. It is loading up like a wave pulling back before it breaks. The real turn the one this whole forecast is built around, arrives when we push toward the 25th and 26th. That is when the block matures. That is when high pressure fully anchors up toward Alaska and up toward Greenland, and the jet stream carves its deepest trough down into the middle of the country. When that happens, a substantial cold front comes barreling south. And this one is not a preview. This is the wave finally breaking. For the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast, we are talking about temperatures running 10 to 15 degrees below average. And in the core of the coldest air, potentially 20 degrees below average. Let that number sit for a second. 20 degrees below normal in the final days of August is the kind of anomaly that makes people reach for a jacket they had packed away for the season. Overnight lows in the coldest pockets could tumble into the 50s. And if the American model's deep resolution wins out, some spots could even flirt with the 40s. That is a taste of early autumn arriving while the calendar still says summer. Here's a question I genuinely want you to answer down in the comments. Are you the person cheering for this cold front to come crashing through? Or are you the person who is not ready to let summer go? Now, here's the twist that most people are going to miss. While all of that cool air floods into the north and east, the exact same pattern does something almost cruel to the southern part of the country. Remember, when you build a giant block and force the jet stream to buckle, you do not just create a cold trough. On the flip side of that buckle, you create a ridge, a dome of heat. This pattern shoves that heat dome right over the west and the south central states. So, at the very moment folks in the upper Midwest are pulling out sweatshirts, folks across Texas, Oklahoma, the deep south, and the desert southwest are getting hammered by relentless, dangerous heat. This is not a small footnote. The Climate Prediction Center has issued a key message specifically warning about extreme heat and rapid onset drought building across the southern United States. The ground dries out fast, the heat feeds on itself, and it becomes a genuine hazard. In the hottest zones across the desert southwest, afternoon highs will still punch past 110, even 115 degrees. Across the south central and southeast, widespread readings over 100 are on the table, with heat index values climbing well beyond that. The drought risk makes it worse. Dry soil cannot cool itself the way moist ground does. Every hot day bakes the land a little harder, and that baked land then radiates even more heat back into the air the next day. It is a feedback loop, and once it gets going, it is hard to break. Let me talk about the storms for a moment. When cold air on the move starts colliding with warm, humid air that has been sitting in place, the atmosphere reacts, and that reaction is storms. Over the past couple of days, that clash has already produced rounds of rough weather, and the Storm Prediction Center is flagging more of it as the front pushes through. The good news, and I want to be clear and calm about this rather than hype it up, is that this is not shaping up to be a major tornado situation. The primary threat with these storms is wind, along with hail. The Storm Prediction Center has been highlighting the potential for wind gusts strong enough to snap branches, knock down power lines, and cause the kind of scattered outages that leave neighborhoods dark for hours. There's also a real hail threat, with some storms capable of dropping stones large enough to dent cars and damage roofs, in some cases exceeding 2 inches across in the most intense cells. These storms are not separate stories. They are the sound of the pattern changing. Every one of these fronts is a boundary between the old air mass and the new one, between the summer that is fighting to hang on and the cooler regime that is trying to take over. Let me talk about the tropics for a moment, because you may have heard chatter about a system out in the Atlantic, and I want to give you the honest, grounded red rather than the scary one. There's the possibility of a tropical wave rolling off and trying to develop out in the Atlantic, but the odds of it becoming something significant that threatens land are low right now. And here's the fascinating part. The very same pattern we've been talking about is part of the reason. Remember that strengthening El Nino? One of the things a strong El Nino does is crank up the wind shear across the Atlantic. Wind shear is absolutely brutal for a young tropical system. It rips the storm apart before it can organize. On top of that, if the block sends a cold front pushing far enough out, it can inject dry, stable air and even more shear right into the path of any wave trying to spin up. So, while the tropics are never something to completely ignore, the atmospheric deck is currently stacked against major development. Let me get concrete about what you can expect and what you should do. If you're in the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, or Northeast, prepare for temperatures 10 to 20 degrees below average. Have a jacket or sweater ready. You'll need it in the mornings. Overnight lows could drop into the 50s or even 40s. This is a genuine taste of early autumn. If you're in the South, Texas, Oklahoma, or the desert Southwest, heat index values of 105 to 115 degrees are expected. Stay hydrated. Don't wait until you're thirsty. Limit outdoor activity during peak heat hours. Check on vulnerable neighbors and family members. For everyone, when storms are in the area, have a way to get warnings. Secure loose outdoor items before strong winds arrive. Know where the sturdiest room in your home is. A 70-mile-per-hour wind gust can be just as dangerous as a tornado. Let me put all of this together into one clear picture. A rare double block is forming, one dome of high pressure anchoring near Alaska and another near Greenland, forced into place partly by a rapidly strengthening El Niño out in the Pacific. That double block buckles the jet stream, carving a deep trough down the middle of the country that floods the north and east with unusually cool air for late August, while simultaneously building a heat ridge that traps dangerous, drought-feeding heat over the south and the desert southwest. The clash between the incoming cool air and the lingering summer warmth fires off rounds of storms, mostly wind and hail driven rather than tornadic, as the pattern rearranges itself. The reason I'm confident telling you the relief is coming is that the driving signals, the negative North Atlantic oscillation, the negative East Pacific oscillation, and the strengthening El Niño are all pointing the same direction at the same time. The heat that has felt like it would never end is finally meeting its match. The door to autumn is cracking open earlier than expected across a big piece of this country. If this made the forecast clearer for you, hit that like button, because it helps more people find honest weather coverage instead of clickbait. Share this with someone you know who has been miserable in the heat, because relief is on the way and they deserve to hear it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you're ready for the cool down or dreading it. And if this helped you, check out my video on the weekend storm shift. Say weather aware. Look out for your neighbors. I'll see you in the next one.